by the American Lung Association.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Welcome in, everybody. It's another Sports Daily right here on KFH. I'm Jacob Albracht alongside Tommy Castor, Jad Chambers producing. And we are happy to be with you with what's turned into a rainy morning here around the area. So hope you are dealing with that appropriately. Brought the umbrella, getting more of that moisture we need so badly. Good show for you coming today. We expect to catch up with Kevin Saul. I believe, Tommy, is this the first time we've talked to Kevin Saul since the new baseball hire, I believe?
Yeah.
So we'll get caught up on that. Some changes on the basketball coaching staff as well. Zach Clemens has returned to KU, which has been an interesting development. We'll get into that, as well as, speaking of KU, where do we want to see Grady Dick land? Like, what's the ideal spot for Grady Dick? We'll get into that with the draft tomorrow and certainly more on the draft as we make our way to it. And Tyreek Hill in a little bit of hot water, potentially, again, for some antics off the field. All coming for you. The IHOP hotline is wide open for you today. 869-1240 is that number. As always, you can also get in touch with us on our video stream, which you'll find on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. It's all there for you. You can go back and listen to the show or any podcast versions of it on the free Odyssey app. Tommy, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Driving into the office today, I was just waiting for Noah and his ark to come floating by. Heavy rain, and I got to take Kellogg all the way to the office, and it was a little bit of a treacherous drive. Made it in, though. We're good to go and ready to rock and roll.
Here we go, rock and roll. I don't even know where to start. We got a lot out there today and a lot of different places. I think the place to start is this Tyreek Hill story, which, if you didn't see it last night, Tyreek Hill allegedly on Father's Day, sounds like got in a fight, Tommy. I think. I'm trying to get a little more information, but it sounds like he and an employee at a marina, which might be some sort of like party environment. I don't think he's actually like at a marina, but anyway, and I guess like an argument or something ended again allegedly here with Tyreek Hill punching somebody, I assume here, striking an employee, according to some of the reporting from a local TV station there. Miami-Dade police did confirm that Hill is under investigation. He has not responded here. Tyreek Hill is on a spot where he can have none of this, right? Like with his checkered past, like you can't have any of this sort of thing happen. Now, we don't know the circumstances or the details, whether he was defending himself, if he punched first, whatever it is. We just know that this situation exists, and it's not a good situation no matter what happened. But Tyreek Hill finds himself in some more legal trouble potentially here.
Yeah, it looks like he was out fishing with his agent, Drew Rosenhaus. And that was on Tuesday when Drew Rosenhaus tweeted out a video of them fishing together. And so it looked like this incident happened on Sunday, on Father's Day, allegedly some kind of disagreement. We don't know the details of the actual disagreement. I'd read a report that allegedly Hill slapped the employee on the back of the head. Other reports have said that he punched the man. Regardless, though, the allegation is that he struck another individual and is now under investigation by the police. And to your point about how he can't do any of this sort of thing because of the checkered past that he has, that's true. And everybody is well aware of the past that Tyreek Hill has had, the trouble and the hot water that he's been in before, going all the way back to his college days and getting kicked off the team at Oklahoma State. And then, having investigations go on with him while he was a member of the Chiefs. This is disappointing to me if it turns out that this is a true situation, because I feel like Tyreek Hill, at least in the last couple of years, has done a really good job of flying under the radar, keeping his nose clean, doing all of that. And so, and it's not just Tyreek Hill, and it would even be the same if you were a professional athlete that didn't have a checkered past. You've got to be better than that. You've got to have thick skin. You've got to make sure that you understand that, you're going to be attention grabbing, and that, it's going to be the top story if something like that happens. So, Tyreek Hill, probably more than anybody else, should understand that, if you let your emotions get the best of you, it's going to come back to bite you.
I these situations are always, I am probably more than the general public sort of a let's see, let's let the details of this work out, innocent till proven guilty. But when you have the past that Tyreek Hill has, when you have, pleaded guilty to domestic violence for punching and choking your pregnant wife, when you've got another situation with that same woman and a kid that was dismissed, that the DA is, unclear, you don't get to have the benefit of the doubt. Then you have your past brought up. So, it's just one of these things where we have to sort of watch. You have somebody who has, once been in a lot of trouble, rightfully so, maybe not even enough for a violent situation. Once, you know, uh, had a case dismissed, but lost some custody and had, just a really messy situation again. You don't get people. It's much harder to say, well, let's just hang on and see what happens. And maybe that is the right case, but in public opinion matters too. And I don't know what would happen here with Tyreek Hill. I don't know if this potentially gets him, you know, suspended. I think there's a decent chance it does, though, Tommy, more so than it might for another player that doesn't have, the history that Tyreek Hill has. Even if you take the 2019 incident with the Chiefs away, because that case was dismissed, take that away and just go back to his time at Oklahoma State. And when you consider that, if you're the NFL and, you don't want this kind of stuff, you don't want this kind of attention. If Tyreek Hill really, again, the circumstances don't matter when you have that sort of past, right? Like if you've got somebody that's never been in any trouble at all, where it looks like they're trying to be taken advantage of, it's different than this. And Tyreek Hill has to know that, right? Like you have to just, no matter what's going on, try to excuse yourself from the situation as best you can. So again, I don't, there's a lot of details still emerging here, but I think when we look at it, most importantly, you look at it just like is he going to be suspended if in fact he's found with any sort of guilt, even if it's just not that big a deal.
And I think that also one thing to keep in mind in this is that allegedly, as of right now, the man that was allegedly struck by Tyreek Hill at this time, according to reports, does not want to press charges. And so, I don't know how much that plays in to it.
So why was he arrested or not arrested?
He wasn't arrested. He's just under investigation.
He was not arrested.
He was not arrested. Right.
Why is he in this trouble if this guy doesn't want to press charges? That doesn't make a ton of sense.
I mean, I think the word trouble is subjective. Is he really in trouble right now? He's there. The police are investigating an alleged altercation. I'm not trying to downplay it, but what I'm saying is that, if the police were called to this location, they spoke with the man. The man says, yes, there was an altercation. We got into a disagreement. I got slapped in the back of the head, or I was struck in some way by Tyreek Hill. It's all good. We're okay. I don't want to press charges. Then at that point, I guess maybe due to the fact that it was physical, the police have to do, their job and investigate it. But I wonder if the fact that this man allegedly, as of right now, does not want to press charges means that this whole thing goes away.
Yeah, I just don't know why police would even investigate in the first place. It's a little strange, like, because if you're out fishing, and why would there be? I don't know. Maybe there was somebody else on the boat. I don't know.
And by the way,
that's
a radio host in Miami, and a local TV station in Miami, reporting that the crew member does not want to press charges, allegedly. So this is what one of the local TV stations in Miami is reporting. Said that the incident started when Hill's crew tried boarding a boat without permission, and apparently an employee at the marina tried to stop them. And I guess that police are also reviewing video which may show the altercation. So that may be a reason why they're investigating, is that, security camera footage potentially caught this alleged altercation.
Yeah. You just can't do it. You just cannot do. Like, so if let's just say that happens, right? That's the situation. Don't try to board a boat. You're not supposed to board. Like, you got to be more aware of circumstance and potential for this, right? If you misbehave, like he has been given a second chance that maybe he shouldn't have been given. That's not my opinion. I don't really have a strong opinion. The legal process played itself out, and for the most part, he's done what he needed to do to put himself back in this position. But if you can't learn from your past, like, you cannot act that way if that's what happened, because the chance for bad consequence is too high. I don't know. We'll see if the Dolphins or the NFL decides to do anything with this, and we're a long way away. This may turn into nothing, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that it turns into nothing. I think we just need to keep an eye on it. That happens with Tyreek Hill. That news coming out overnight. IHOP hotline is open, 869-1240. Bit of an open segment as we get things going here on a Tuesday. So let's go to Mike on the line. Mike has a Royals question for us. Mike, what's on your mind?
Hey, guys. Hey, it's nice to be on the air. After the Royals finish their series with the Tigers, the Royals will face the Rays, the Guardians, and the Dodgers. How good are those three teams? Thanks, guys.
I mean, those teams are good. The Rays are the best team by record so far in baseball. The Dodgers are probably sub what we think that they ultimately will be and always are in recent years. So good. And the Guardians are hanging in there. They're not great, but they're not bad. They're hanging in there in a bad division. There's, the problem for the Royals when you look at the schedule is at this very moment. Now, they have regained some ground on Oakland. Oakland, after that hot streak, has now lost 6 in a row. So the Royals are no longer worse than Oakland. So that's good news. But anytime they're playing anybody else, most likely this year, they're not going to be as good as the team they're playing, at least by record. So there's never going to be like schedule relief for the Royals. They're not ever going to be favored. I mean, almost never when you look at it that way. And I don't know. I mean, we know we've talked at length about how bad this has gotten and is. I don't know if there is a win streak in there possible. Any of that? Like, is there any chance they play their way ahead of anybody besides Oakland? I mean, I suppose. But that's not really anything that's going to get anybody excited. Now, you would have to have like an 8, 9, 10 game win streak or something, I think, to get any sort of buzz going. But yeah, the Royals, who hey, by the way, got a good pitching performance last night, got a win last night. Good, that's great. Good for them. Happy for them against the Tigers. 1-0, which is always an interesting baseball game when you get that. Daniel Lynch won his first game of the year. So, a little bit to get excited about here. But yeah, that schedule, as Mike brought up, is going to be a little rough here over the next 3 series.
Well, and as you mentioned, that I don't think that there is the potential on the table for them to overtake anybody else other than Oakland. They don't have the firepower to have a 5 or 6 or 7 game winning streak or even more than that. In fact, they don't even have the firepower to win more than probably 1 game in a row. Daniel Lynch, though, I do want to give credit where credit is due. He threw a great game. I think he only threw like 78 pitches, but gave up no runs, was pretty stellar in that outing. And I was nervous that the Royals were going to blow it offensively. It's like you finally get a really good pitching performance and the Royals offense can only muster 1 run. Luckily, though, for the Royals, 1 run was all they needed, and they were able to salvage that victory against the Tigers. But it certainly doesn't get any easier for the Royals after this series.
No, and look, here's why last night was good and what you can take from these sorts of games, and they will be interesting for the next month-ish. You got a hold from Chapman and a save from Barlow. Chapman was not, great. He walked 3 guys. But didn't give up any runs. Barlow gave up a hit, but, they got through those innings. that's going to be good news. I don't think Daniel Lynch is any sort of trade candidate. He's actually had not been terrible this year in the limited action he's had. But, Chapman and Barlow closing down a 1-0 game, that in all reality is the best thing that can happen for the Royals right now this year, is for those two guys to pitch well. Because if those two guys can pitch well, they're going to become, trade candidates. And it blows my mind that the Royals, I cannot fathom the fact that they have been in this rebuild and are still this bad. But the reality is you're going to have to get some new players in there. Look at that. We were talking about this yesterday around the office at the TV station. I was like, man, I don't know that there's been a team in recent memory that's as good with more players I don't know anything about than the Orioles right now. The Orioles are good. They've been good for a couple of years. Their young talent is doing well. It's a bunch of players that, there've been prospects called up that are performing. And it's like, that's what the Royals should be doing right now, right? Like after all these years, like that's what they should be doing. And there's just not a lot there. And so the only thing that's going to give you hope as a Royals fan right now is that any tradable asset plays well for the next month. Like now's the time to get hot. If it's going to happen, now's the time because you can increase that trade value. And I think that the two most valuable assets they'll have are Chapman and Barlow, either separately or maybe even together. That's the interesting thing for the Royals here is they do have this combination of guys that they have absolutely no use for. Barlow should have been traded a while ago. We all know that. But they had no use for these two. Maybe there's a way to trade them together, and then you can get a bigger prospect than you might get normally. I don't know. You know what I haven't done, and we need to do at some point this summer, is check in on the return from the trades last year. How is that all looking? Because that's something I don't really know. Those were never going to be like high on prospect list guys, but maybe handy pitcher kind of guys, which we thought the Royals might desperately need this year. Hasn't played itself out that way. So we'll need to check in on that at some point. But yeah, 1-0. You get those two guys in a hold and a save. That's honestly the best case scenario for the Royals right now.
It is. And when you're hanging on by a thread, I'm not sure that we've seen, I mean, there might have been a couple of games this year. And by a couple, I mean like 2 or 3, maybe, where you watched a complete performance, both offensively and pitching wise for the Royals. It's very rare to see a complete game all come together from everybody on that team. And so last night you had great pitching. The hitting didn't really do a whole lot. But, the Tigers aren't a great team. And yet, the Royals gave up a lead in game 1 of the series. They held on for the win in game 2. The rubber match is this afternoon, some day baseball. I think that you would feel a little bit better. I mean, clearly the Royals are god awful, but I guess you feel maybe a slight bit, a tiny bit better if you can go on the road and take 2 out of 3 from Detroit.
Taking a series win. I mean, you can get excited.
They haven't won a series in over a month, so I think little wins are all you can hope for at this point.
Speaking of baseball, and we may get into this later in the show. I don't know yet. Did you see the travesty in the Rangers White Sox game?
Okay, so it's 9:20. I thought that you would bring it up about 18 minutes ago. So you're about 18 minutes later than what I thought you would bring it up. But yes, I did.
I wouldn't even normally bring it up, but it is getting national play today because it brings instant replay into a conversation. If you didn't see it last night, at some point before we get to the end of the show, maybe we'll spend some time with this. Maybe we will tomorrow. But there was a play at the end of the game in the bottom of the 8th inning that literally, according to everybody who's seen the play, including broadcasters on both sides, everybody was a totally normal out, and they reviewed it and then said that the Rangers catcher Jonah Heim was blocking the plate for Elvis Andrus to score. And they said he was out, but he was blocking the plate. And he very, very, very clearly was not. And doesn't make any sense at all. And it's been just it's the strangest thing. And we have replay now, and they got it right, replayed it, and then got it wrong. It's the strangest thing. What are we even doing at that point? And I know it's getting national run because replay in baseball is not everybody's convinced about replay in baseball, Tommy. And this is as good a case for the anti-replay people as you'll ever see because they got it right, replayed it, and then got it wrong.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite of the way that replay should go. And there are countless examples of umpires in the moment getting a call wrong. They review it, they get it right, everybody moves on. And I think everybody feels good about the fact that the call is correct at that point with replay. This was the exact opposite of that, which we don't see very often at all. But yeah, I don't know where that came from. I'm not sure what in the world was going on. It was weird. That was a strange play.
So the Major League Baseball says that the catcher's initial positioning was illegal and his subsequent actions while not in possession of the ball hindered and impeded the runner's path to home plate. He had the ball like 3 steps before Andrus even got close anyway. Like, it was just not close. It was one of the strangest calls I've ever seen, and it came at just like the worst time. The winning run in the bottom of the 8th inning. I don't whew. We'll get into it later. I mean, it is the summertime, so maybe in hour number 2. So check it out in the meantime, and if we have time, we'll get to it later. We got Kevin Saul, we think, coming up. The schedule's been a little wacky with another hire to be made, but we believe we have Kevin Saul coming up at the top of hour number 2. We'll get into some more things. Zach Clements is back at KU in an interesting turn of events. That's where we'll go next here on Sports Daily. It is a Wednesday. The IHOP hotline is open, 869-1240. It's Albracht and Castor. We'll be right back.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is Sports Daily. It's Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor here with you on KFH. You can also find us on a video stream if you check out Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. You can leave comments on Facebook and YouTube. We get those and can take those, put them up on the screen here and talk about them. It's pretty cool if you haven't checked that out yet. Tommy, Zach Clements is back at KU in news nobody saw coming yesterday. Clements, a chance to return and maybe take the Mitch Lightfoot path to KU legend, right? This is interesting. I don't know about this because I think so. Here's what happened. Let's start. If you didn't see this, Bill Self was ready to talk about the draft yesterday and just sort of brought up that Zach Clements is back. The same Zach Clements who announced he was transferring to Santa Barbara on May 3rd, all of a sudden is going to come back and he's going to redshirt. Self says that Clements just called him up and was like, hey, what would you think about this idea? And Self said he thought it was a great idea. Didn't see this coming, and it's an interesting turn. I think, we don't see that type of thing happen very many places, but it does happen for Kansas and Lawrence. And I think, there's a billion reasons why, but Zach Clements got on the bad side of the fan base last year because of some of the shots he would take. This is interesting. I still think Zach Clements has a chance to be a pretty good player. I don't know how good he's ever going to be at KU, but he'll be handy at some point. He's got skills. He's got size. I'm surprised by this, but, I suppose good for KU. He's not going to be a factor unless something tragic happens this coming season, but he could be down the road.
You know what's weird about this entire thing with Zach Clements? I've been following the conversation on Twitter ever since Bill Self announced that Zach Clements was returning. And the fan base, I think, is pretty divided. In fact, I would almost say that, from the accounts that I follow and look at, there are a lot of KU people that are like negative on this move of Zach Clements coming back. And I think what's so crazy about this is the fact that if everything was equal, if you didn't know Zach Clements, if he hadn't played a single game for Kansas, but you were to be told that a 4-star recruit would be coming to KU to play, everybody would be thrilled about that. And that's the way that everybody was, feeling when Zach Clements originally committed to KU. He hasn't panned out in that way. I thought that, and you and I talked about it before, I think we both thought that he would have taken a bigger step forward before the start of last season. That didn't happen. Found his way, further and further down the bench and was getting limited minutes and that sort of thing. And yeah, the shot selection wasn't great. I think that, for a program that typically prides itself on developing players over time in the system. Look at Jalen Wilson, for example, from the time he joined the program to now going in the NBA draft. That was kind of a swing and a miss for Zach Clements. Really didn't develop in the way that folks thought that he might. So the fact that he's going to be coming back, I'm positive on it solely because of one reason, and that's Hunter Dickinson. If Zach Clements has the opportunity to redshirt and learn under Hunter Dickinson and practice against him, be kind of that scout team guy to work throughout the entire season, there could really be the potential for a big step forward, not this coming season, but the next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just I don't get it, and I'm with you. Like Zach Clements has a chance to be a pretty good player, and I think some people are just angry at you can't get that angry at shot selection, right? For a guy who's desperate for minutes, who probably, if you turned back time in his recruitment, everybody thought had a chance to be a good player, right? So don't take that, that desperation as a thing that closes the book on the fact that Zach Clements has a lot of skills, right? And we saw it at Sunrise, so maybe we're a little bit more biased to what he can be, and what his ceiling probably is and should be. But yeah, these guys don't fall off trees. And so if he's willing to come back, redshirt, get better, learn under Dickinson, maybe, because the reality is after this year, even if Dickinson's still there, there's going to be a need at that spot. It's one of the hard spots to fill in college basketball. And now you have a guy that loves it, I suppose, in Lawrence so much that he's willing to come in redshirt halfway through his career.
And don't you think that's, I mean, the fact that he could have went and he did commit to Santa Barbara, he would have, you would think, have started and made a big impact for that program right away. Instead, wants to come back to Kansas to redshirt and then, not play this coming season. I mean, to me, all signs point to wanting to learn and practice with Hunter Dickinson for a year.
I don't think it's Hunter Dickinson. I think it's this. You're Zach Clemens. You 2 years ago probably thought you were going to be an NBA player. So you sit here and you wonder, like, okay, if I go and start at Santa Barbara, what does that do for my chances to play at the next level? I've got to leave all my friends, a place that I love, that I always wanted to play. Is that a better chance than to go back to KU, who is a factory, to send guys to the NBA, try to work my way up into a better player and take my chances there. And, oh, by the way, stay at a place I love and a program I love, see all my friends, practice with them every day. Clearly has a good relationship with Bill Self, I would suppose, based on what we heard from Self yesterday. It makes a lot of sense. I get it, right? Like, what is going to Santa Barbara, even if you become an 18-point a game scorer, is that really going to enhance your chances in the NBA? Or is it better to go to Kansas, work your way up and get 1 year of significant minutes to see? And I'm not even necessarily talking about the NBA now. I'm just talking about to be a pro basketball player. I just think when you put it on the scales, if Santa Barbara is the option and not, Alabama or whatever, reality set in a little bit of like, what am I doing this for? Like, this isn't going to increase my chances enough to leave all of this that I love behind. And I totally get that. And I love that Bill Self's willing to be like, sure, come on back.
Yeah.
You got to be on a red shirt though.
Right. And when he announced that he was transferring out back in May, I don't think it really moved the needle a whole lot for a lot of folks because I hate to be harsh, but it was disappointing. His tenure was disappointing at Kansas. It didn't pan out initially the way that I think everybody thought. I had the thought in my mind when he committed to KU that it might take a year to get him developed into a point to where he could be an impact rotational player on that program. Didn't really happen. I actually thought that there was a chance going into his sophomore year that he could find his way into the starting five. That obviously didn't happen. I was really disappointed with the lack of development and growth from year one in Bill Self's program to year two. So when he transferred out, it wasn't a good riddance. It was more like man, that's a bummer because that didn't really pan out the way that anybody thought it would. And that happens from time to time. And, you wish the kid the best and he moves on. Now, the fact that he's coming back and redshirting, I think that tells me a lot about the guy. It tells me a lot about the player that he wants to be. It tells me that he wants to continue to learn and develop, and that by continuing to ride the bench and be the fourth big off the bench for Bill Self. I mean, he found himself last season behind Zuby Ejiofor and Ernest Uday. Like, he was getting mop-up minutes at the end of blowout games, and that was basically it. The fact that he wants to redshirt and spend an entire year developing his game, man, I think that there is then the possibility that he can really be an impact player, come the season after next.
I think that's right. And it's not like he didn't have opportunities to do that either. Like, there were some times where, they kind of needed him to be a big contributor, and it just wasn't happening. And I think that's where the pressure and the desperation came in, and why some fans were, very turned off to some degree by Zach Clemens. But again, I don't think in this situation, when you basically get a player of his, upside just more or less dropped into your lap, who's willing to not even, take a scholarship and, to some degree, then yeah, like, okay. I how could you not be excited about the possibility there? Because in 2 or 3 years, just like Mitch Lightfoot, who, by the way, was a key contributor when KU needed him on a national championship team. Well, yeah, bring that on. Because even if he doesn't become a great player, having him in the room for 3 more years. Like, for everybody else, that's going to have benefit. Like, I think sometimes we undersell how much work goes into practice, especially when you're talking about coaches like Bill Self. Like, the work that's done in practice is so critical. Even just to have Zach Clements there later in his career is going to have value to Kansas. So this is a great thing to happen for Kansas. I mean, it's good. There's not much downside, even potential for downside
Right.
here in this. So yeah, Zach Clements is back. I'm very surprised by it. I'm happy for him. I was hoping when he transferred, he'd get a big opportunity at a bigger program, because I am curious about his upside. And he's a guy that played at Sunrise. So again, we do want him to do well. So maybe it's at Kansas. What I don't know, Tommy, is does this give him back his one free transfer? I think that it does, because he didn't actually go there. So, and I don't know, I don't know that he'd be a transfer candidate at any point now, because he's not going to play this year. But if it even opens the door later on to get that better transfer, I'm not sure. But I think it probably does. I don't think this one counts as his one. I think he would get to put that back in his pocket.
Yeah, I think that's important too. Considering that it's not going to be this season, but next season. And correct me if I'm wrong, he's got 3 years of eligibility left. Is that right? Or
I
2
don't know if he
years?
qualified into the COVID thing. He's played 2 years. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know
He's
the
either got
timing of it.
2 or 3 years of eligibility left.
I'll be ready for that to stop, so we can actually know how many years of eligibility guys have, because that's
Right.
made everything so confusing for the last 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure where he fell in that and how that works. I honestly don't know.
I
But it's
would
plenty.
Yeah, I would suggest that Kansas and Bill Self will spend as much time as they possibly can during Clemens's redshirt season on getting him ready to be an impact player for this program for however long his eligibility is, whether it's 2 years or 3 years, I don't know. Because if they can get him developed during this redshirt year and he can come in and have a big impact, think of the pressure that takes off of the staff on going out and trying to find another big. And they might have to do that anyway. But I mean, who knows what'll happen? Like, will Hunter Dickinson play his second year for Kansas? We don't know that. We know he's locked in for at least 1 year. But as of right now, you've got the opportunity to develop in-house with no pressure a big without having to go to the transfer portal and find somebody in future seasons. So I would imagine that this becomes a really top priority for Kansas to try to get Clements ready to go.
Yeah. I agree, and I think it's good news for Kansas fans. Coming up, top of next hour, Kevin Saul, Wichita State Athletic Director, joining us. Looking forward to that conversation. A lot to catch up on with him. We'll come back, more Sports Daily, as we roll forward on a Wednesday.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Tommy's big day. Big day over at HTO. New summer flavor, blueberry summerade. Blueberry summerade.
Wow. That sounds awfully refreshing.
That's the summer flavor. It has the tea, and it has the there's at East where we do coffee. There's a breezer that's some sort of fancy version of that too. So blueberry summerade, HTO fans, you can get that. Let's hook some people up, Jad. Let's do one free brew house, which would be the coffee drinks or that breezer, and one of the iced tea. We'll do one of each card to our first caller over to HTO. Right now, 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline. Jad will get a winner picked out. Yeah, it sounds pretty good. Sounds like it's going to be a pretty popular one. We've been excited to get that one out there. But yeah, blueberry summerade, which is, as you would imagine, a take on blueberry and lemonade, some combination of that. I have not tried it yet. My wife doesn't let me get like sneak peeks or anything of this stuff. So I'm right there with everybody else. I got to go try it.
You ought to be like the official taste tester of, like the quality control, basically. Like that ought to be your
I wouldn't
job.
be good quality control because I don't drink most of the sweet stuff. I grew up on unsweet tea. So like when we get to and I try them and they're amazing, but like when I drink tea, I generally drink unsweet tea, which, I think biasedly, obviously, I think HTO's is the best. That's the reason we brought it here. Is because we think their tea's so good. My wife doesn't drink sweet tea either. We're unsweet tea drinkers. Now, the sweet stuff is the most popular by far, and this is obviously going to be a sweet version. I think of this as like a pool drink, Tommy.
Okay.
Perhaps mixed into some other concoction that might also be delicious. But yeah, summer flavor is
I
out.
would imagine
blueberry summer.
I would imagine that the thought of potentially making it into another concoction, that's probably not officially sanctioned by HTO, right? Like that's not the
no, that's officially
line.
sanctioned by me.
Right.
That's
like
what is the
else
old
into the blueberry summerade?
What's the disclaimer? The thoughts and opinions of me don't reflect whatever. Yeah,
Right.
That's me talking here.
Okay.
But I'm saying what everybody's thinking. Congratulations to Charlie for winning that contest. So tea and coffee. Also have all the new iced coffee drinks that are still just a couple of weeks old here. So congratulations to Charlie as we make our way through this rain, man. It has been an interesting summer. We get rain again today. We're getting all this moisture we need. I was just back in the Texas Panhandle where I'm from, where they basically haven't had rain for like 3 years. We're talking like, new Dust Bowl, like haboobs. You've seen the videos, I'm sure, all this craziness. And they've had something like 18 inches in the last 3 weeks. And we drive in and there are like playa lakes where in my entire life, I spent the first 30 years of my life there basically, where I'd never seen water gather. They've had floods and all this stuff. It is wild to see it. And then, of course, I'm sitting there. I'm like, we're going to go. And even if it's dried out, like it's going to be pterodactyl mosquito season in the Texas Panhandle. When you get that much water, like the mosquitoes are going to be, and it doesn't get like it's not super humid. So like The mosquitoes were out in the middle of the day when it's like 80 degrees, like, whatever it was there, it got warm by the end of it. But like you're not just fighting mosquitoes in the evening time. Like it's full day, full on mosquito season there right now.
Yeah, we are working on right now redoing our deck in our backyard. We've got a contractor that we're working with on all of it. And last weekend they were working on that. We're covering it. So they're working on the roof and all of that framing and all this stuff. And then there was a tornado warning on Saturday night, late. Like you and I were texting, and and at the time you were like, "Hey, did anything happen in Wichita?" I'm like, "No, not really. Like everything was good." And then boom, like an hour later, sirens go off. The alerts come up on everybody's phone, and I'm like, "Oh, great!" Like we're working on this deck right now. The last thing we need is like all this rain and wind and hail and all. Fortunately, everything turned out okay, but for a few minutes there, like I woke my wife up. I'm like, "Hey, sirens are going off, just so you know." And she's got PTSD from the tornado last year in Andover a little bit, and so we're dealing with all that. And then, of course, driving into work this morning, more rain. It's been definitely an active and stormy pattern around these parts.
There was a tornado that hit the town of Perryton, which is in the Panhandle, which is up in the northeast part of it. And they got it bad. And so, yeah, I hated to hear that. And it happened again when we're out of town, just like the Andover tornado. I was out of town. My wife was here, but it's just like, oh God, here we go. I don't know. I don't know. We're in that time of year where please pay attention. I'll, get our Storm Team 12 app over from KWCH, because that stuff, like, it alerts you. We hear it all the time. Thank you. It's always thank you to the meteorologist. And, I lost TV and all this stuff, and I was just these alerts. It happens. It works, and it's why we pay so much attention to it. So please be careful out there. And, we'll take this moisture. Raining again today. It's not great for iced tea sales. I'll tell you that.
Hey,
I will sunshine there.
I will tell you real quick. I know there's been a lot of talk recently nationally about AM radio, and of course we're on AM radio. When the Andover tornado happened last year, we live in Andover. Power went out. We lost everything, and cell service was down. We got nothing. The only way I got updates was on AM radio. So, it's super important. So, not only download those apps, make sure you've got like a battery powered radio somewhere. That way you can turn it on and be able to get all the coverage.
Yep. There's a lot of different ways to stay safe, and it's already been an active season, and it looks like it's going to stay that way. We're getting pretty, it feels like summer used to feel like, right? Just kind of always have to pay attention and keep an eye on things. And we know that moisture is certainly good for everybody. All right, we're going to take a break here. Coming up, hour number 2, we'll start things off with Wichita State Athletic Director Kevin Saul. We'll get the latest on what's happening with the Shockers, touch a little bit on the baseball situation. There's some basketball news as well, where things go into this summer, and some expectations. We'll see if he's seen this basketball team in any of their workouts and give us a little scouting report. But we'll do all that as we make our way forward on a hump day on Sports Daily.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Hey, Shocker fans, want the latest on Wichita State athletics? Let's go right to the source with Shocker AD Kevin Saul.
And we welcome back in, everybody, to hour number 2 here of Sports Daily on KFH. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you with us either on the air or on our video streams on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter as well. It's Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, joined by Kevin Saul, Wichita State's athletic director, who always busy these days. Our first chance to catch up with Kevin in a while. How are you?
I'm doing well. Jacob, how are you this morning? Tommy, hope you're doing well. Thanks for having us on your show.
Yeah, at what point do things like settle in for you, Kevin? The 3 major coaching decisions. It's been a wild. We're about at the 1-year mark, right? We're coming right up on your first year here, and there's been a lot of changes for you in Wichita State, the most recent in baseball. You've got your new coach there in Brian Green. I guess first things first was you announced a staff yesterday for Coach Green now. The very, very early returns on that hire. How have things gone?
Very well. We're really excited about that. Go back and answer your original question. I don't know that given the landscape of college athletics that there is a time that it slows down at this point in the industry. So I just got off a Zoom conference call about sports wagering and monitoring of activities of student athletes and staff nationally, and just all kinds of issues that we're certainly walking through as an industry. And we've talked at length about NIL and transfer portal, which certainly is at the forefront of what we do, particularly in our baseball program. But you're right, Jacob, it's been almost a year. My first day on the job was July 5th, and just have been incredibly blessed to meet a lot of great people and have a lot of great things happening. We've had some significant change. Obviously, 3 head coaches, as you mentioned, all for unique individual reasons. And I think you can get into a little bit of a danger zone when you start to think collectively about those 3. But again, I'm certainly willing to dive into areas that I can with you all, but really excited about the staff. You know, Coach Green had mentioned throughout our process and at the press conference event that needed a good mix of both Midwest and national recruiters. And I think we've got that with Coach Overcash, Coach Miller, Coach Claggett. And certainly those guys are working really hard. I'm excited about the commitments that are rolling in terms of young people in our baseball program. I think we have spent a lot of time with current roster, both administratively and from a coaching staff perspective. With current roster, I spent a lot of time with 23 signees, with both our current roster and 23 signees' families. I've had multiple Zooms with those folks as well. And, you know, I think throughout the process and even after we made the decision to open it up to a national search, you learn a lot of things. And I think we are in the right spot. I think we needed to make a change, and we certainly have, and we're focused on moving forward.
I want to ask you about the current roster, follow up on that a little bit. We've seen over the last couple of days a decent amount of current players deciding to return to the Shocker program. And when we had Coach Green on the show a couple of weeks ago, he talked about how important that was for him to start to form those relationships and talk with those players that were part of the program last season and talking with them about coming back this season. So from your assessment as of right now, how is that process going and working with some of those current players that are in the program, that were in the program last year, about coming back and playing for Coach Green?
Well, I would tell you that the number one priority from the Tuesday after Memorial Day to today, and will be throughout the course of the summer until we finalize a roster. It has been the number one priority. Filling a staff and then working in collaboration both administratively and as a coaching staff to retain as many current players. I will tell you that we shared very early on that everyone's scholarships would be honored. That's certainly the way to handle that with character and integrity when you have a coaching change. We shared the same thing with our 23 recruits. We offered an extension in terms of timeline for players that entered the portal. There is a rule that basically when you enter the portal, you do forfeit your scholarship. And that's a standard practice throughout the country. And so we offered our families, because it felt like it was the right thing to do. We gave them a 2-week buffer period from the time that Coach Green was announced to really make a good decision, get to know Coach Green and the staff. And if they chose to transfer after that, obviously we're going to put our best foot forward and do the absolute best thing that we could do to retain them here. But we're also not here to hold anybody hostage. So I think we've done the right thing by our current student athletes. Certainly disappointed to see some of those leave, and we can certainly talk about that if you guys would like. But I think we've done a nice job in holding together a majority of the 23 signees. And the coaching staff, again, I'm very excited about the early returns of 6, 7, maybe even 8 as of this morning commitments that are coming in. And so we're really excited. We got a lot of work to do to fill the roster. Quite frankly, guys, to just be honest with you, I think many of our young people, based on the challenges that we went through in the fall, beginning in October and kind of culminating in December, and some of the challenges that, again, aren't necessarily known by the general public that occurred throughout our spring season. I think Coach Pelfrey did a nice job of threading the needle with Shane Dennis on his radio show. Our guys are fatigued on Shocker baseball. And I take that personally in terms of providing a first-class student athlete experience in all of our programs, but particularly our baseball program. I'm not sure that we've done that here over the last 9 to 10 months or the last several years. And it's time to address that and change it moving forward. And that's certainly what we're doing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Kevin Saul, Wichita State Athletic Director. I appreciate your candid, tone there. And I just wonder, because I've had a hard time with this. Like for me, it is easier because it's just more familiar to evaluate men's college basketball, right? And we've had so much success here that becomes an easier evaluation, a more simple one than baseball, because over the time in the recent, decade, a little more than a decade plus of no postseason and all these things, there have been individual spurts of success. There have been a lot of really, really good players that have come through, but nothing's been sustained and nothing has generated the buzz of yesteryear with Wichita State baseball. I would imagine that has a lot to do with a change as well, but how do you get that? Like, how do you get people excited about the program again and put butts in those seats at X Stadium again? Because isn't that what it's all about when we talk about Shocker baseball?
Well, it is. And I think it absolutely starts with an individual that is committed to a partnership and a plan that is leading your program, a definitive plan for how we're going to obtain our goals, our strategic objectives. And I think you've heard Brent Kimnitz talk about it. You've heard Mike Pelfrey talk about it, that the minimum standard in our program has been established by literally decades of success. And this is a program that expects to be in NCAA regionals. And we haven't done that in the last 10 years. And so I think it's really important, first and foremost, we've got a beautiful facility. We have an Omaha facility in terms of being able to recruit young people to a facility that lacks for nothing from a player development standpoint: weight room, nutrition, coaches' offices, one of the nicest team rooms in the country. Guys, I had an opportunity to design and build a $50 million baseball stadium in Lexington, Kentucky. And we spent 8 to 10 years compiling notes because we knew that was coming at some point. So I got a really good perspective on what's out there from a collegiate baseball facility perspective. And I would put our facility in the top 10 to 15 in the country. We lacked for nothing there. What we need to do is obviously the human resource aspect is what's critically important. You can have the nicest facility in the country, but if you don't have the right folks in it leading that program, it doesn't matter. And so partnership, a plan, a definitive plan for how we recruit, how we train, how we develop, how we're going to create a first-class student-athlete experience, an experience that our student-athletes don't desire to leave, are all components to that. And at the end of the day, Jacob, to answer your question, how do we get individuals to come back? We've got to do our part. We got to work incredibly hard. We got to get better every single day. We have to have a commitment to our young people to put our student athletes first and foremost in everything that we do. And that hasn't been the case. To put them first and foremost in everything that we do, so that we can create a product that the Wichita community and that the region is incredibly proud of, and that wants to support, wants to be a part of.
Kevin, I was really impressed in talking with Brian Green and just his vision, his enthusiasm for the job for Wichita. And I also think that he's realistic as far as the path and the work that's ahead of him. That being said, he was very clear, I think, in his press conference and when I had the chance to speak with him, that the goal, and I think it's obviously your shared goal as well, is to get this program back to Omaha. And while I was incredibly impressed with him, Coach Green has never led a team to Omaha before. So what do you see in him that leads you to believe that he has what it takes in building a roster and coaching a team to get them back to the College World Series?
Well, I think that's a great question, Tommy. And we've talked about it with some of the other hires that I firmly believe, and I've learned over my time, that it has to start with a profile for a head coach. And from a baseball position perspective, our profile was pretty clear. We needed an individual that had led a program or programs and had shown the ability to turn around programs, to be a builder, to grow and develop. We needed somebody that placed the highest priority on a first-class student-athlete experience and the culture amongst the staff and between the staff and the locker room and the culture within the locker room. We needed somebody that had an elite attention to detail in all of those components. We needed an individual that had shown the ability to recruit at a incredibly high level, whether they were at an institution that was easy or difficult to do so. When you look at Brian Green specifically, to have 4 nationally ranked recruiting classes in Las Cruces, New Mexico, there's something to be said for that. To take over a program that I believe prior to his arrival had 11 wins, and in years 4 and 5 to have 2 consecutive championships and make the NCAA tournament. There's something to be said for flipping a program, for turning it around, for building something there. And I mean no disrespect to great people that I know at both New Mexico State and Washington State. Pullman, Washington is an incredibly difficult place to recruit. You are recruiting against USC, UCLA, Arizona, Arizona State, Oregon, Oregon State. You're recruiting against 5 NCAA tournament teams this year in the college baseball tournament, College World Series. So incredibly difficult place to recruit. It's cold. You could argue it's the northernmost school in that league, in a West Coast and Southern league. And Pullman is very remote. And so to compile a 29th ranked recruiting class in the country in Pullman, to compile a 1st and 5th ranked junior college class in the country in Pullman, there's something to be said for that. And so it was more important for us to understand that we were getting an individual that had an elite attention to detail, that had an engaging personality in the community that could rally support, that prioritized a first-class student-athlete experience, that had flipped a program or programs, showed the ability to recruit at a very high level at two difficult places, because we believe strongly that we have a phenomenal experience here. We've got phenomenal facilities. We have phenomenal community support, and we need the right individual that can build that and also be a gatherer and wrap his arms around the community.
Kevin Saul joining us here, Wichita State Athletic Director. It's been a while, so a lot to catch up on, and we appreciate the time here. Let's transition a little bit to hoops. And I want to get your scouting report in just a minute on what you've seen out of this crew in the summertime, as they've had some work. But before we do that, it's all because everything has gone so crazy. It's almost what would normally be like one of the top headlines ever has been pushed to the side just a little bit. But you guys are playing Kansas now. You know, I'm an outsider, and I came in and was like, well, why don't Wichita State and Kansas play all the time? And I know now the challenges of that and the difficulties to get that done, but you guys got it done. Just take us through first the process to do that. Like, how difficult was it to get a game with KU in the regular season? You got neutral court, but that hasn't always been an easy thing to do, and you guys got it done.
Well, again, I'm not into the credit piece of it. I think it was a collective desire to get it done. So it wouldn't happen if it was just Wichita State being interested in it. It started back in the fall. I reached out to Travis at Kansas, and most importantly, just wanted to spend a little time with him. I'd not met Travis before, and so we got together. I drove up to Lawrence. We had a great conversation, learned about him and his family. We talked about a number of things. Obviously, growing up in Manhattan, I had some familiarity with K-State and Kansas and all that. So great conversation. And certainly I went there with the intent to talk about potential opportunities down the road. We discussed it. There was some mutual interest. We got our coaches involved and discussed it both on our campuses. And then coaches talked about it as well. At that point, Coach Brown was with us. And we got to a good spot. And so I started to work with Sean Lester, who is a longtime friend and colleague. I've known Sean for probably close to 20 years. He's the basketball administrator at Kansas, and our paths crossed a bunch when I was at Kentucky. And I've known Sean for a long time. And we started to work out the components of that deal. Obviously, the Kansas City Sports Foundation Commission was integral in that, Kathy Nelson and her staff. And just started day by day, put the pieces in place brick by brick to make it happen. And so obviously we're excited about it, to do something that hasn't been done in what I think 31 years. There's an excitement to that. Obviously we want to perform well and do all those things. So again, it's a good development. And hopefully we can continue to excite folks in our scheduling philosophy and results in the years to come.
Kevin, the news dropped yesterday that already a shakeup on Paul Mills' staff before a game is even played. Chris Hollander resigning due to personal reasons. But TJ Cleveland, who was most recently the associate head coach at St. John's, has already joined the program. What can you tell us about TJ Cleveland and what he brings to Paul Mills' staff?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that question, Tommy. Obviously, there are HR components that we all have to work through. And so speculative reports are certainly out there, and folks have their sources. I need to reserve comment on both the personal aspects of Coach Hollander's situation. Obviously, we respect him a great deal, and then certainly I wanted to journey with him, and he's working through some personal, what I would say are some urgent personal components. And so obviously our hearts and thoughts and prayers are with Chris Hollander and the Hollander family. And he informed us that he needed to prioritize those elements that were going on in his life. And certainly we understand that component. And so that shifted our thoughts to a search. I'll reserve maybe thoughts and deep dive into TJ for maybe a later date as we finalize some things. But we're excited about the direction. Obviously, it's an unfortunate circumstance, but at the end of the day, guys, life happens. And we're all humans first, and we need to understand that component, our obligations to our families. first and foremost above everything else. So we wish Coach Hollander and his family the best. We'll stay in touch with him and support them through the process that they're going through, and we'll go from there. That's fair.
Kevin Saul joining us. We appreciate that, and we're with you on that. Certainly, I think there is this just appetite right now to know more about the basketball program. So as we look at it, they've had some summer work. I don't know how much of an opportunity you've had to see this group and sort of what they look like now. We know they get to go to Greece, which is going to be extra practice, which is going to be great. And practice seems so important now, maybe more than ever, as we get guys so little time together in the new era of college basketball. But have you seen this new group? And if you have, what have you seen from them?
I've seen some individual workouts. I've seen some small, 4-on-1s. You understand as we get into the summer access component, there are NCAA rules in terms of when you can have full team practices and when you can't. When it needs to be 1-on-1 versus a max small group is defined as 1-on-4. And so you may have all the guards working together in a certain practice. But so I've had an opportunity to see some of the 1-on-1s, some of the 4-on-1s. The beauty of the Greece trip is that we have an opportunity for another 10 days of full team practices that our peers don't have, that aren't going on a foreign tour. So that piece is incredibly valuable. The competitions in Greece will be valuable as well. So we'll get 3 or 4 games there and have an opportunity to test out different combinations. But I think our coaching staff is excited. Obviously, I'm not a basketball coach. I'm a AD that's watched a lot of basketball in the last 25 years. Certainly encouraged by what we've seen. There's athleticism, there's size, there's length. There is proven productivity, and we've got some great young men that I'm still learning as they get on campus here in the last several days, still meeting those guys and starting to build relationships. So it's early, but we're excited about what we've got going, and we've got a couple more positions to fill. Obviously, we're in the middle of conversations with multiple guards. The transfer portal activity is really off the charts, unbelievable. I think we're pushing 1,700 or 1,800 men's basketball student athletes in the portal. Guys, I heard yesterday that there are 20% of college baseball players are in the portal nationally now. There's about 10,000 Division I college baseball players, and 2,000 of them are in the portal as of a couple of days ago. So that process has occupied a lot of our coaches' times over the summer, when it's normally been looking at maybe your 24, 25, and 26 classes. We're in the mode of building teams year by year here. So that's occupying a lot of time. So long story short, we've got some components that we need to put in place to complete our team, but certainly encouraged by the early days of workouts.
I guess final thing on that, you mentioned that just portal craziness. We're more familiar with it in basketball than baseball, but is there a path as we bring this all full circle? We know that it's worked in basketball to have a quick, road to success through the transfer portal. Do you think that's there in baseball as well, like it has been in basketball? And heck, maybe even football with TCU there last year. Are these rebuilds potentially quicker because of the portal?
I think they can be. I think you get the poster child of the quick rebuild, which was Coach Tang up at K-State last year, and I'm sure there's 358 other Division I coaches that are looking at and going, "Holy cow, we got to do a great job in the portal." I don't know that there's another team that you could point to last year that had the amount of success that K-State had in terms of flipping the magnitude of the roster they had to last year. We've got 11 of our scholarships filled right now. At this point last year, Coach Tang had 7 of his scholarships filled. And so I think there is the opportunity to do it quicker. I think that it requires that you really dive in not only to the technical skills and abilities and the history of productivity. You got to know who you're getting. And so the character and integrity components of the portal are really important. Why they're in the portal, and making all the phone calls and the research, because at the end of the day, you can assemble talent, but at the end of the day, if it's not the right talent, it doesn't complement each other, you're gonna struggle in your locker room. So it takes time to work through all those things. I'm sure we'll get there soon. I think you can in baseball, Jacob. The one that I would look at, you mentioned TCU in football, and I think that's a really good example. The one that I would point to in baseball maybe last year was Arizona State. I think they flipped 31 or 32 positions out of their 35-man roster last year and had a pretty good year. So it certainly can be done. It's not what you'd want to do every single year, but I'll tell you this. If you were to balance out 20% of a 35-man roster, if my math is right, is about 7 players on average across all the Division I baseball teams. That does not include those that have exhausted eligibility, i.e. graduated, or have exhausted eligibility and still need to go to school, which you might have a handful of those in your program. So it is reasonable to expect that our new normal is going to be 10, 12 baseball student athletes rolling off of a roster every year based on the figures that we're seeing right now. I would tell you, I'm sorry, am I going long?
No, you're good. You're good.
I would tell you that I think the discussions that are involving NIL, transfer portal, the transparency and the lack of truth that exists in that space right now, I think will slow down portal activity in the future. So I don't know that 20% will be the norm down the road.
Yeah, and that's that's a conversation maybe for the next time, as you know, there's lawmakers potentially involved in that. But we appreciate it. There's a lot to get through today, and I know we went all over the place, and we'll hone in as we make our way forward. But we appreciate that. Here's to year number 2. I suppose maybe things will settle in a little bit for you, Kevin. But we appreciate the visit, and let's do it again soon.
Well, guys, I really appreciate the time, and I had a chance to catch your show prior to our baseball decision, and I appreciate both of your guys' perspectives. You approach it from an educated, passionate, and high energy perspective. I would encourage us all just to think about, in athletics, we make very, very public decisions, and not all of the reasons and justifications for those decisions are accessible to the public. So it is a difficult spot to be in, and I appreciate you guys presenting both sides of the coin in a respectful and professional way.
Of course, that's what we'll do. It sucks. I mean, it sucks anytime change has to be made. We understand that, and at the end of the day, I think the same thing for us and you and fans and everybody involved when it comes to baseball. Everybody wants butts in that stadium, and everybody wants to be back in the postseason. At the end of the day, that's the bottom line.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we can certainly agree to that. Understanding we've got some infrastructure and work to do to get there, and we're certainly committed to that every single day with good partnerships and a good plan. So, again, appreciate the time, guys, and wish you a great day, and go Shockers.
There goes Kevin Saul. We'll do it again in a couple of weeks. We'll probably have a little more info on the practices and stuff for the basketball team. So all kinds of good stuff and news dropping. It is the summertime, but we appreciate these visits, and we'll continue that. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll digest a little bit of that. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. It is back open. It's Albracht and Castor on a Wednesday. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, Sports Daily. Good stuff with Kevin Saul there. Had a lot to get through and a lot to digest with it. That's good, Tommy. I think all the thoughts were when it comes to when it comes to baseball. I think it's pretty clear there, but the right things in the right direction was not being taken for the program. And again, we've talked about it ad nauseum. At the end of the day, like regardless, this team has to get back to the postseason. Has to get back in the psyche of this community where people are buzzing and talking about and attending, right, and supporting Wichita State baseball, because there have been small pockets of success, whether it be the Todd Butler era, which, by the way, he was just hired back on at Oklahoma where he played yesterday. Some of those teams had great players. Some of those teams won a bunch of games, and it wasn't enough then. So it does take more than that. And that's, top priority, I think. And one of the top priorities, period, along with, men's basketball returning is baseball returning.
Yeah, everybody can agree upon the fact that, the success of Shocker baseball is paramount, and having, success at the top of the mountain, going to Omaha, playing in the College World Series, competing for national championships. It's been done before. It needs to happen again. And so everybody can agree upon the fact that that's where this program needs to be. I think that you talk to 10 different people, you might get 10 different ideas on exactly the path to get there, but the goal remains the same. And I think that as long as everybody is united in that thought process, that, Shocker baseball will be working in the right direction to get to that point, I can get on board with that for sure. And so, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I wish Coach Brian Green all the best. I was very impressed with him, talking with him on this show a couple of weeks ago after he was introduced as the new head coach of Shocker Baseball. I want to see him have a ton of success. And every time there is a returning player announcing that he's coming back to Wichita State, every time there's an announcement on social media of a new recruit coming to the Shocker program, it gets me excited. It gets me fired up because I want to see this program back up at the top of the mountain.
Everybody does. And at the end of the day, that's what needs to happen. It's crazy. And I said this then, and I was gone when it was officially announced, but the fact that the Shockers are playing Kansas in basketball is a really big deal. We've seen them be able to play K-State over the last couple of years, and I hope that continues as well. But that is big, for these communities, and becomes, big event, big everything, and neutral court is okay. Maybe that can be played at Intrust down the road. I'm not sure. But the more that kind of stuff happens, the better. And that stuff, man, that stuff matters when you talk about getting people excited. And I don't know if the Shockers were in their glory years if this happens. I'm not sure, but I'm just glad it's happened. And it sounds like, Travis Goff had a lot to do with that too. So glad to see that. That's big time news most of the time. That just tells you how nuts things have been. And there'll be a settling. There will be. But when that is a, back page headline, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I do have to say also, I think that we are in an era right now with the three major universities. And I don't know, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. You can disagree with me here, but I think we're in an era with the three major universities in this state where you have three really, really solid athletic directors. You've got Gene Taylor at Kansas State, who, won the Athletic Director of the Year award. You've got Travis Goff, who has been aggressive and forward thinking at Kansas and hired Lance Leipold and, trying to get that program turned around, renovating Memorial Stadium. And then, of course, you've got Kevin Saul here in Wichita. So you've got three major, I think, positive athletic directors who are moving their respective universities in the right direction.
Yeah, I think, from Gene Taylor's perspective, it's been positive in every regard, right? There's major fundraising, there's successful coaching hires for Goff. There's been the big successful coaching hire, at least in the short term. They're still working on the fundraising. And for Kevin Saul, it's too early to talk about any of the coaching hire successes, but the fundraising's been there in a big way between softball and the weight room for the basketball teams and volleyball. So, yes, I agree with that. I do agree with that because I think you're seeing positive things happening in all three places, and that's good.
Hasn't always
because
been that
here's
way.
the reality for this state is without a pro team, and the Chiefs, we take the Chiefs and the Royals to some degree, but that Kansas gets to own exclusively. Those three universities are pro teams. I mean, they are. They're treated that way. Just about everybody is, a fan of one, if not two of them. Usually the Shockers can get a little shared love there, but it is important and it matters and it means a great deal to this state. And it means a great deal when this state can host NCAA regionals and doing these things. So, yeah, again, it goes back to that old question we've talked about it before. Everyone assumes biases. For us professionally, we don't have them. You might, have grown up a longtime KU fan and still root for K. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to wishing for success, we wish for everyone's success. It's much better that way. It's more fun that way. It's no fun when nobody stinks. It's no fun right now that the Royals stink, right? We hate that. We carry their games on this net. We want them to be awesome and amazing. I'm a Rangers fan. Tommy's a Braves fan. We both want the Royals to be great. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And I know, I've been here my entire life. I've been in Wichita my entire life, and this city is better when Shocker basketball is good. We saw that with the Final Four run. This city is better when Shocker baseball is good. going back to the 80s and 90s. And if you can have both programs performing at an incredibly high level, and then you add on women's basketball, you add on softball, you add on some of these other sports, track and field and volleyball and others, this city is better when Shocker Athletics as a whole is performing well.
It is, and it always will be, and we want that to happen. So we appreciate Kevin Saul. If you missed any of that conversation, you can go back and listen to it on the Odyssey app. You can download that for free. We basically have a podcasted version of the show that you can access there, so it's super cool. I know podcasts are a big deal. We, of course, love live radio and a live video stream now, too, by the way, Facebook and YouTube, if you haven't checked that out. We'll come back. Let's talk about this instant replay thing in baseball. I keep seeing it, the conversation happening, and it does bring up a bigger conversation as we talk about new rules and should we get robots in there and how much do you want to change and do. And here is a spotlight play last night that really impacted a game, more or less decided a game. We'll talk about it next on Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. It's Albracht and Castor. Tommy, couple minutes here. So we get the play in the Rangers game. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to check that out. We brought it up in the first hour. Basically, there was a play in the bottom of the 8th inning. The White Sox were trying to score. Elvis Andrus was gunned down, tagged out by Jonah Heim. The call on the field is an out. They go to commercial. It's really obvious. I think the White Sox honestly had a challenge to burn, so they're like, all right, let's challenge it. They come back, they show the replay, everyone's like, okay, it's clearly an out, and then they reverse it, and everybody's surprised. The White Sox are surprised in the dugout, obviously. Bruce Bochy loses his mind. The broadcasters on both sides, they don't understand it. Nobody understands it. Major League Baseball tries to back it up this morning by saying there were things being done before the catcher received the ball that impeded the runner to the plate before he got the ball, and then he caught the ball. Very clearly wasn't impeding the plate because there was a clear path for a slide. They got it wrong. They got it right. They reviewed it. Then they got it wrong. And now they're trying to backpedal. That's what you cannot have happen in a critical moment of a game. If you're trying to promote the fact that these replays and everything helps you always get it right, you can't review it and get it wrong. And they did, man. That was a bad call.
Don't you think that that's kind of the exception and not the rule? Like it was an anomaly? Because I think that there are quite a few instant replay decisions where, like I mentioned at the top of the show, it's the other way around.
Blocking the plate
where
rule
the call on the
always
field
seems
was
fishy.
I know. I get that's a weird one. Like that's kind of an anomaly, I think. But typically you're talking about close plays at a base, in the moment as it's happening really fast, bang, bang play, the umpire may not get right. And then replay does its job and they're able to get the call right. So I think that more often than not, this is a positive thing, but it's the same way with just regular human error umpires.
It is.
Where you're going to get the call wrong.
But it begs the question of what's better. And so, like, what would have been better last night? Well, just to trust the human. Sometimes, and this is where it gets really interesting, and there's, there is the black and white nature of an out is an out, as safe as safe. But there are a lot of people, and I don't know where I fall on this, by the way. I don't have a strong take. Let's say there's a play at second, the runner is very clearly gunned down, but somehow the tag is not, whatever. Somehow he gets a finger in whatever, and they go back and they look, and a very obvious, what should be outplay, and they're like, oh no, he's actually safe. Is that better, or is it better just to know that you got caught, you got gunned down, it wasn't close? I'm not sure, and I know there are a lot of people, and the reason I bring it up, that would say the throw beat him, he's out. Like the throw beat him, he's out. A technicality, maybe he got around or whatever. Or here's another example on the flip side of that. You're stealing a base. You're very clearly safe. Your foot comes off the base by a centimeter. They've got their glove on you the entire time. And in your through slide, the foot comes off the base by a centimeter and you're called out even though you beat the throw.
But then you're not safe then, right?
Like I know. But I'm trying to give you one on both sides of it to say you beat the throw in this this minutia.
Stay on the bag.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is if you didn't have a replay in that spot, you're called safe, obviously.
And
it's only a replay that goes through that. But last night, a replay, when you're trying to dissect it, can get really technical into a space that you don't want to get necessarily.
You're right.
If the throw beats the runner sometimes.
I think it's an anomaly. I mean, we're not talking about a bang bang play here. We're talking about a judgment call about whether or not a catcher was blocking the plate. So I have no issue, generally speaking, with instant replay, because I would rather the call be right than just a judgment call. And that's what baseball has always been.
But the call wasn't right
judgment call. I know the call last night was not correct. That's the anomaly. By and large, though, instant replay gets calls that had been wrong correct. So generally speaking, I don't have an issue with instant replay in those situations. Do I think that it was a travesty that this call was overturned last night? Sure. I mean, I think that it was, clearly the wrong call, but that's the exception. That's not the rule.
Yeah, replay invites that. That's the thing. Like it's so hard. And again, I don't have I think I'm pro replay. because I'm with you. I'd like to get it right. Balls and strikes are the next frontier, and that's the really interesting one. And that's where, like, you can't, like, are we going to review balls and strikes at some point? Like, are we go into that world? Like, do we get the
Not if they
ability
want
to
to keep the
review
pace
those?
of the play up. I mean, not if you want to keep the game rolling.
That's
can't
what I'm
start reviewing
saying.
balls and
Like,
strikes.
I don't know, where is the line. I think this all becomes interesting to me because I wonder where the line is. Robot umpires, do you have the ability to challenge balls and strikes? Like, how do you find that fine line? And if we always want to get it right, Tommy, why wouldn't you review balls and strikes?
So here's a perfect example in another sport. So in the NFL, they use instant replay to determine if like a ball was caught or where somebody went out of bounds or whatever. What didn't work in the NFL was when they started reviewing pass interference, because then it became a judgment call. It became the opinion to a certain level. It's kind of the same thing in Major League Baseball. This particular deal was the catcher blocking the plate. That's a judgment call. A bang bang play, that's different. I'm okay with that.
Well, in the bang bang nature of it, he was out clearly in the judgment part. So do we now make blocking the plate not something that can be reviewed?
I'd be okay with that.
Baseball's going through the headaches that the other sports have gone through. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's hard and it will stop the pace of play. But if you want the call to always get right, balls and strikes in theory are not judgment calls. So should those be reviewed?
Again, if you want to keep the pace of play up, I'm not sure how you can do that.
You only give them one or two chances and the opportunity to do it. But is it just you say, all right, robots, take over the balls and strikes, which I also don't know how I feel about.
Yeah.
I would need that tested at the minor league level.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way with you, because that ends up being super, super technical. And you're talking about fractions of inches in a strike zone. And I don't know, that might be inviting disaster. That I'm okay with where things stand right now.
It may be the best thing that ever happened, because I think if hitters, hitters and pitchers universally would probably like it. Hitters don't want pitchers to get calls either.
It's all about consistency. And so if the best way to get consistency is to get there, I mean, I'd have to see it to believe it, but that could be the next place we go.
And how on earth would you get that down to the lower levels of baseball? That would be the next part that would be a real problem. All right, let's take our final break. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on the network today here as we make our way through this Wednesday edition of Sports Daily.
Madison Legal is the way to go. Call 550-0000.
All right, everybody, that does it for us today. Appreciate Wichita State Athletic Director Kevin Saul for stopping by. We can go back and listen to that on the free Odyssey app if you missed any of that conversation. Good perspective on the baseball program and how things are going in men's basketball. Jim Rome follows us at 11 here today. The Royals are on at 12, so that's what takes over as they play and try to take a series against Detroit. We'll have Tim Fitzgerald, Chelsea Messenger on with us tomorrow. Looking forward to that. For Jad Chambers and Tommy Castor, I'm Jacob Albracht. We'll see you Thursday.